I'm going to show you how to create this animation, because if you're not using this feature in Cavalry, you're missing out. Let me explain. Say you have a value that controls the X movement of two different cubes. As one would expect, they move at the exact same speed. But if you add an interception called an expression, you can, for example, select 0.5, which is going to halve the value. And what that would do is it would halve the speed of the bottom cube, as you could see right here. But what can we use this for? Let me show you. So jumping into Cavalry here, we have a quite simple scene, but it's really going to teach you how to use expressions in Cavalry. And quickly going over why I chose this exact animation for learning expressions is that we both have a horizontal slider, but also a circular progress bar. One being determined by the X value, while the other is determined by an angle because it's a circle. And the real magic happens when you can control these two things using only one value, what I like to call a controller, making it not only really easy to animate, since we only have to animate one value, but also it's procedural, so we can just change that one value if you only want the progress bar to be 75% filled out in this case. But the possibilities are endless with this expressions. Let's begin. So start off by creating a new composition, and let's start by adding a line to create this slider. Now we can change the length by selecting length, and then I'm going to choose a value of 500. And then we also want to move it down a bit to make some space for the main element, which is this circle progress bar. Now next we need to add a circle, which is going to be this handle for our slider. So again, we want to scale things down for this one. I'm going to use a value of 30 by 30. And then on the position, we're going to copy the position of the line, which is going to be minus 300. And then you can see you can change the position by just dragging on the X value. And what this is going to do is it's obviously going to change the progress on the slider, but it's not really going to do it like you have 0 is completely to the left and 100 is completely to the right. It's like minus 250 is the beginning, which is quite counterintuitive. And with expressions, we can actually make this quite a lot easier. But first, let's change the color of this to make it stand out a bit. And second of all, we want to control this whole animation through a value. So we can go ahead and select our lip shape, and then next to the X position, we can right click, add behavior, and then select value and then X. And what this is going to do is it's going to have a value that's going to control the position of the X, as you can see right here. And now we don't have to like drag on the position of the actual circle, but instead can just change one value. So you can see by default, a value of 0 doesn't resemble 0% on the slider, and 100 is not all the way to the right, 100%. So a way to fix this is using expressions. So just set it back to 0 and then go into the lip shape. And as you know, we've connected the position X to the value. So we can right click and then add expression. And we're going to use the X value, the top value, and we're going to use minus 250, which is going to add this interception, changing the value where it's going to be minus 250 when the value is 0. And if you scroll all the way over to a value of 100, you can see it's not all the way to the right, i.e. 100%, but maybe only a fifth of the way there. And a way to fix that is to take a look at the distance from what is going to be 0% and 100%, which is 500 in this case. So we need to have 100% be 500. And to go from this 100 to 500, we just need to change one thing in the expression, and that is to add multiplied by 5. And now if you go ahead and change the value, you can actually see that a value of 0 is going to be 0%, and a value of 100 is going to be 100%. But you can actually see that it can move beyond this point, and we don't want that. But this can be changed quite easily later. So let's focus on the actual progress bar. So to start, we can add an ellipse shape. And what this is going to do is going to be the border around our actual progress circle. I'm going to select the radius of 250 and then move it up by 90 on the y-axis. And then to make it a border, we can disable the fill color and then instead enable the stroke color. And lastly, before moving on to the actual progress circle, we can change the color to be completely black. And for this progress circle, we actually don't want to add another ellipse. We want to add something called an arc. And if you don't know what an arc is, let me show you. So you can add it by holding Alt and then pressing this shape. And let's start off by moving it up by 90 on the y-axis. So there are a few settings, but nothing too overwhelming. First of all, outer and inner radius, which is quite intuitive to understand. It gives this donut shape. And for this, I'm going to use a value of 235 and then a value of 100 for inner radius. Now, start angle and end angle is what determines where the arc begins. And as you can see here, this is the beginning. And then end angle in this case is going to determine how far the progress bar has been filled out. And these two things we want to connect in some way so that when the slider moves, the progress circle also moves accordingly. And to do this, we need to somehow connect the end angle to the slider's movement. And we need to do that through the value. So we can drag the blue dot from the value into the end angle. And now if we go ahead and click on the value again, and then we can try to change this value. And you can see that both the progress circle and the slider is moving at the same time. But you can see at 100%, the progress circle is only at 100 degrees in this case, because we are working with degrees on the arc shape. But before we fix that, let's change it so that the arc moves clockwise when the slider goes up. So select the arc shape, and then on the end angle, we can add a new expression to this. And to reverse the value, we need to type minus and then parentheses and then value and then close parentheses. And now if you hit enter, you can see that it has reversed and now it goes clockwise instead of counterclockwise, which makes more sense in this animation right here. And now we're actually ready to change this where it's going from 100 degrees to actually filling out the whole shape 360 degrees. To do this, we again need to select the arc shape again and then add a new component to the end angles expression. But what do you think we need to type in? Is it multiplication or division, and what value is it? The answer is times 3.6, which makes 100 be 360. So now you can see that the value is going to be at 100%, it's going to be 360 degrees. So now it actually works the way we want to, but we're still not done with the animation. And you can see that it can go all the way through the progress bar, which is a problem. To fix this, we need to add something called a number range. And the way we do that is we go ahead and select the value, and then we can go ahead and right click on the value, and then we need to add a behavior. And what we need to add is a number range. And then down here we can see we have a new value. And if we select this, you can see that we have a few settings. By default, you can see that if we try to change the value, you can see that it actually works and we can't go past 0 and 100. So now we can actually, just to make it a little more intuitive, have this value be controlled by another value, so we don't have to go into the number range to change the progress. So again, we can do the same thing by right-clicking on this value in the number range, and then we need to add a new behavior, a simple value. And now we can create a little controller here where we take the two old values, or the number range and the old value, and pack them inside of the new value, which we can call controller. And as you can see, we can try to change the value and it won't go past 0 and 100, but there's something wrong going on where 10 is 100%. To change that, we need to change one thing inside of the number range. So go into the number range, and then we need to change the source maximum to also be 100. And once we've done that, you can see that if we then go back to the controller value, we can try to change these values, and you can see that now it works as intended, and we can't go past 0 and 100. And now only thing left to do is, first of all, just change the color of the arc shape so it's matching the other colors. And then let's try to make a simple animation. And what we need to do is only animate the controller, which is really what's one of the benefits of expressions. So we can go to frame 0 and maybe also just change the frame rate to 60. And now we can go ahead and add a value keyframe at 0 and a keyframe at 120, which is going to be a value of 100. And if we just play this animation, it's going to be quite boring, but we can change the interpolation, the key interpolation, by just applying a simple slow in, slow out magic easing. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it.